They say time heals all wounds. But for a man who walks alone for too long, time does something else. It hardens him. It shapes him into something sharp, precise, and almost untouchable. Not because he was broken by others, but because he learned to never need them in the first place. At first, being alone feels like freedom. No obligations. No distractions. No one to explain yourself to. You eat when you want, sleep when you want, leave without a word and return without consequence. The silence feels clean, peaceful. But slowly, that peace turns into something else. Something more formidable. Because the man who lives without affection learns to live without approval. He learns to be his own witness, his own judge, his own comfort. He stops reaching for validation. And when a man no longer needs to be seen, he becomes invisible, not to the world, but to the systems that once kept him in line. Social expectations, romantic compromise, polite conformity, they all lose their grip. This is where the danger begins. The longer a man stays single, the more he detaches from the soft language of compromise. He stops explaining his thoughts in ways others want to hear. He stops bending. He stops apologizing for being intense, or obsessive, or brutally honest. He stops taming his mind for the sake of fitting into someone else's idea of safe. He sharpens instead. Like a blade in a drawer, untouched but ever ready. He reads more, thinks more, observes without reacting. While others argue about the news or post about their weekend, he's watching the patterns, noticing the gaps, understanding the game beneath the noise. Solitude becomes his forge. And in that forge, he's not softening, he's crystallizing. That doesn't mean he's cold. No, the dangerous man isn't heartless, he's focused. He may still feel deeply, but he doesn't broadcast it. He may still want connection, but he never begs for it. He may still believe in love, but he would rather go without it than settle for something hollow. That's what makes him hard to approach. That's what makes him terrifying to some, and irresistible to others. Because he cannot be manipulated by flattery. He cannot be distracted by games. He has learned to live with himself, and that makes him immune to shallow approval. He is kind, but not obedient. Calm, but not tame. Alone, but not lost. People don't understand this kind of man. They ask, why is he still single, as if it's a flaw. They don't realize, it's not because he can't find someone. It's because he won't settle for someone who doesn't match the depth he's discovered in himself. His solitude is not a prison. It's a test. And most won't pass it. He's not looking for someone to save him from his loneliness. He already defeated that beast. What he's looking for is someone who respects his silence, someone who doesn't need to fill every moment with noise, someone who has built themselves in the same fire. And until that person appears, he walks alone, with purpose. That's what makes him dangerous. Not dangerous in the way of violence. Not dangerous in the way of recklessness. But dangerous in the way of clarity. You can't control a man who doesn't fear being alone. You can't manipulate a man who finds more comfort in solitude than in fake smiles or forced conversations. He's not cold, he's just beyond reach for anyone who hasn't done the work. When others are drowning in distractions, the dangerous man is thinking, training, evolving. He knows time is his ally. He's not wasting it chasing shallow connections or pretending to be someone he's not just to feel accepted. He's building something inside himself, something no one can take away. And the longer he walks that path alone, the deeper his roots grow, the stronger his core becomes. Until one day, if he chooses to step out and speak, or act, or lead, he will not do so as a man seeking approval. He will do so as a man who already has everything he needs. Inside, you won't see him coming. He won't announce himself. He doesn't need the spotlight. But when he speaks, people will listen. Not because he demands attention, but because there's something in his voice that cuts through the noise. Something forged in solitude. Something earned through silence. And if he does choose someone to walk beside him, it won't be because he's afraid to be alone. It'll be because he sees in them the same strength he found in himself. Not a weakness to fix. Not a void to fill. But a fire that matches his own. Until then, he remains single. Not waiting. Not wounded. Just walking. Watching. Becoming. That is why the longer a man is single, the more dangerous he becomes. Most people don't notice it happening. They don't realize that the quiet man who always sits alone isn't lonely. He's observing. He's learning from everything. Every mistake he's made. Every fake smile he's seen. Every time he gave too much and got nothing in return. He takes those moments and files them away like weapons. And over time, he builds a code. A system. a standard for how he will live from now on. You see, pain has a strange way of teaching a man who he truly is. Not when he's surrounded by others cheering him on, not when he's safe in the arms of a lover, but when he's alone in a silent room, wrestling with his own mind. That's when the real growth begins. That's when the boy disappears and the man is born. A man who has walked through hell and didn't come out begging for company is not a man you can easily bend. He may be kind, but he's not soft. He may be generous, but not gullible. He may listen, but he's not easily swayed. He knows how to separate charm from truth, words from action, attention from intention. And that kind of clarity is rare. It's intimidating, because people are used to dealing with men who are hungry for validation, who chase approval like starving dogs. But this man isn't hungry. He's already full of discipline, full of insight, full of control. That's what makes him dangerous in a world that profits from confusion and distraction. While others scroll endlessly, chasing dopamine in the form of likes and attention, he's fasting from it all. He's not seduced by the cheap highs. He has a deeper hunger, one that can't be satisfied by casual talk or empty pleasures. He wants truth. He wants purpose. He wants connection that cuts deep, not just skin deep. So when someone tries to play games with him, they find nothing to grab onto. When they try to manipulate him with silence or attention, he doesn't flinch. He doesn't chase. He simply steps back, smiles quietly, and keeps walking. Because he's already walked away from more beautiful illusions than most people will ever face. It's not that he doesn't feel, it's that he chooses when to feel, and with whom. His emotions are no longer wild animals. They're trained, disciplined, alive, yes, but kept under lock and key, not for repression, but for respect. He doesn't waste his energy on what doesn't serve his path. This kind of man is not for everyone, and he knows it. He's not trying to be. He's not auditioning for anyone's life. He doesn't twist himself to fit into someone else's expectations. He's not a puzzle piece looking for a missing half. He is the full picture. And that terrifies those who still believe they need someone to complete them. Because what do you do with a man who doesn't need anything from you? You can't lure him. You can't guilt him. You can't promise him something better. He's already built his better within himself. The only way into his life is through authenticity, realness, depth, and those things are rare. This is the paradox of the dangerous single man. He is not closed off. He is simply selective, not because he's arrogant, but because he has learned the price of letting the wrong people in. He knows how easy it is to lose yourself in the wrong embrace. So he guards his peace like a soldier guards a fortress, not with fear, but with respect. And if you think he's wasting time by staying single, think again. While others are caught in toxic cycles, constantly breaking and rebuilding themselves, he's growing, expanding, mastering skills, learning new disciplines, creating something lasting. He's not behind, he's ahead. Because when he finally does choose to let someone in, he won't come with broken pieces. He'll come whole. But here's the twist, most people won't understand him. They'll say he's too intense, too serious, too hard to reach. And that's fine. He's not trying to be understood. He's trying to live truthfully. He's trying to build a life that doesn't collapse just because someone else leaves. And that kind of life, built on solitude, discipline, clarity, and strength, is rare. It's powerful. It's intimidating. Because it exposes the weakness in others. It shines a light on their neediness, their dependency, their fear of silence. And people don't like that. They'd rather label him as damaged than admit they can't match his depth. But he's not damaged. He's refined, like a sword that's been folded and hammered by fire and pressure. He's not dangerous because he's cruel. He's dangerous because he no longer needs to pretend. He no longer plays roles. He no longer fears being alone. And that freedom, that absolute freedom, is what makes him a force of nature. So let them ask, why is he still single? Let them whisper. Let them guess. They'll never understand that he's not waiting. He's building, becoming, and when the time comes, when someone truly worthy appears, he won't hesitate. But until then, he will remain exactly where he needs to be, alone, focused, and unstoppable. There's something else that happens when a man spends years alone. He becomes terrifyingly comfortable with silence. Not the kind of silence that waits for music or noise to break it, but a deeper silence. One that wraps around him like a second skin. In that stillness, he learns to hear things most people never stop long enough to notice. His own thoughts, his instincts, his truth. And that's dangerous in a world that thrives on distraction. When a man disconnects from the noise, he starts to see through it. He sees how shallow most conversations are, how fake the smiles, how mechanical the routines. He sees people trapped in relationships that drain them, jobs that shrink them, lives that don't belong to them. And instead of joining the performance, he chooses absence. Not out of superiority, but out of refusal. Refusal to betray himself for comfort. He learns to trust his gut over the group. He chooses solitude over noise, principles over popularity. And slowly, he stops fearing the world. Not because he feels superior to it, but because he no longer depends on it for meaning. That's the shift. That's where the real danger begins. Because when a man no longer fears being misunderstood, he becomes uncontrollable. You can't cancel him, shame him, box him in. He has nothing to protect but his integrity, and that makes him immune to most modern weapons. He doesn't beg for attention. He doesn't need a crowd. He walks his own path, whether anyone notices or not. You can't seduce this kind of man with comfort. He's lived in his own discomfort too long. You can't buy his loyalty with perks. He's loyal only to truth. You can't scare him with loneliness. He made peace with that a long time ago. This doesn't make him cold, it makes him sharp. He sees through flattery. He hears the lies between the words. He notices the inconsistencies in people's actions. And he calls them out, not always with words, but with presence, with silence, with withdrawal. Because the most dangerous men don't need to shout. They just leave. They leave jobs that kill their spirit. They leave people who drain their soul. They leave situations that don't align with their vision. No drama, no explanation, just quiet exits. And that, more than anything, terrifies those who live through attachment. People like predictability, control. They want to know where a man stands. But the man who's been alone too long doesn't stand still. He moves with purpose. If he speaks, he means it. If he stays, it's by choice, not fear. If he loves, it's deeply, but never desperately. And if he walks away, he won't come back. That kind of finality, that kind of clarity, is rare. And it's dangerous because it's powerful. Because it can't be influenced by guilt, fear, or loneliness. It doesn't negotiate with mediocrity. But here's the thing that most people miss. This man, this dangerous man, isn't trying to be feared. He's not posturing. He's not acting tough. He simply is what he is, disciplined, free, and focused. That's what makes him unsettling. Not what he says, but what he no longer needs to say. You feel it in the way he carries himself. In the way he doesn't seek attention, but still commands it. In the way he listens without interrupting. In the way he says no without hesitation. He doesn't need to prove anything. That's what makes him magnetic. That's what makes him unpredictable. Because when a man is single long enough, he stops pretending. He stops negotiating his identity. He stops shrinking his desires. He becomes brutally honest, not because he wants to hurt, but because he refuses to lie. And in a world full of masks, that kind of honesty is a threat. He's a threat to shallow relationships. A threat to weak leadership. A threat to systems built on insecurity. He's the quiet guy who doesn't play along, and because of that, he sees everything. He sees the angles, the lies, the games. And he refuses to participate. People try to label him. They say he's too guarded, too serious, too intense. But that's because they don't understand what he's protecting. He's not building walls to keep people out. He's building a fortress to protect what he's built inside. Peace, focus, discipline, vision. These are not small things. They took years to build. And he won't tear them down for anyone who hasn't done the same. That's not arrogance. That's protection. Of the soul. Of the mission. Of the man he has become. And make no mistake, he is still becoming. Every day. While others waste time explaining themselves, he's evolving. While others wait to be chosen, he's choosing. While others fear rejection, he's mastering the art of self-respect. That's what makes him dangerous. Because when he finally speaks, people listen. Not because he demands attention, but because his words carry weight. Because he's not trying to impress, he's trying to express. And because everything he says comes from silence, from stillness, from solitude, it hits different. He's not the loudest man in the room. He's the one who says the least, and means the most. He is the man people call mysterious, but he's not hiding. He's just not putting everything on display. He doesn't market himself. He doesn't overshare. He moves like a shadow, but when he decides to step into the light, the world takes notice. Not because he wants it, but because he earned it. And while some people spend their whole lives trying to be seen, he spent his alone becoming worth seeing. There's a moment in a man's life, after enough silence, after enough time spent alone, when something fundamental shifts. He no longer asks the world for permission to exist. He no longer tries to explain his solitude. He no longer looks at couples and wonders if he's missing out. He understands now, he was never behind. He was building, quietly, relentlessly, while the world distracted itself with noise. And what he's built isn't visible to the casual observer. You won't see it in his clothes, his car, or his bank account. You'll feel it in his presence. In the way he looks at you with full attention, undistracted. In the way he speaks slowly, deliberately, because he's not rushing to impress. In the way he's not afraid of silence in conversation, because he knows the most powerful things often come after the silence, not before. The longer a man remains single, the more he cultivates that presence. He becomes more grounded, more exact. His movements, his words, his routines, everything has intention behind it. He's not scrambling for affection or approval. He's already tested himself in isolation, and what emerged is a man who knows how to stand alone without collapsing. You may think he's rigid, that he's set in his ways. But it's not stubbornness, it's self-respect. He's tasted what it means to live by his own code, to wake up and know that everything in his life, every habit, every object, every person, was chosen, not inherited or absorbed unconsciously. That kind of clarity doesn't just happen. It's earned, hour by hour, through solitude. And when he's alone, he's not just killing time. He's studying, reading, training, creating. He's dissecting his own weaknesses. He's learning how to be uncomfortable without panicking, how to be rejected without falling apart, how to sit with grief, disappointment, boredom, and not escape. That's why he grows dangerous. Because he no longer runs from pain. He absorbs it. He makes it part of his discipline. So when chaos comes, and it always comes, he's ready. While others are flailing, seeking someone to blame, someone to hold them up, he's calm. He's seen worse in his own mind. He's fought bigger demons in the dark. And he's still standing. But here's what makes him even more powerful. He still believes in love. Not the fantasies sold in movies. Not the temporary dopamine of attention. But something rare. Something anchored in respect and depth. He knows what it means to give someone space to grow. To not control them. To stand beside them without needing to be needed. That's the kind of love he's capable of. But only if the other person brings the same fire. And that's the catch. Most people can't. Not because they're bad, but because they haven't done the work. They're still looking for someone to rescue them from their emptiness. He's not interested in that. He's not interested in fixing anyone, saving anyone, or being anyone's escape. He wants a partner, not a project. So he waits. Not passively, but with discipline. He doesn't lower his standards just because he's been alone a long time. He doesn't let loneliness pick his company. He knows the price of letting the wrong person into his peace. And he won't pay it again. That's what makes him dangerous. Not to good people, but to manipulators. To liars. To those who rely on guilt, pity, or seduction to get their way. He sees through all of it. He's seen it before. He's studied it. And he doesn't react. He just steps aside, lets the storm pass, and keeps moving forward. There's a kind of strength in that, a quiet, unshakable strength. It's not the strength of dominance. It's not loud. It doesn't need to posture. It's the strength of someone who has built an inner world so rich, so stable, that nothing outside of him can easily destabilize it. And if you ask him about his solitude, he won't apologize. He might even smile, because he knows what it gave him. It gave him himself. He doesn't fear commitment, but he won't commit out of fear. He doesn't hate people, but he doesn't depend on them for peace. He's not antisocial, but he's highly selective. And once he chooses you, if he ever does, it's not because he needs to. It's because he sees something rare, something real. And when that happens, he will give completely, fully, not halfway, not cautiously, but only if you've earned the key to what he built in silence. Until then, he remains exactly where he is, working, evolving, rising. He doesn't announce his transformation. He doesn't ask for recognition, because he's not performing for anyone anymore. He's not here to be liked. He's here to be real, to be free, to be disciplined, to live with depth. That's why the longer a man is single, the more dangerous he becomes. Not to the world, but to everything false within it. Not because he's perfect, but because he's no longer pretending to be anything else. Not because he's unreachable, but because few are willing to reach that deep. So if you see a man like that, don't assume he's broken. Don't assume he's hiding. Don't assume he's waiting for someone to save him. He's already saved himself. And when he's ready to share that path with another, it will not be a relationship built on need. It will be a fire meeting fire, a fortress opening to another fortress, not to complete each other, but to stand side by side, unshakable, unapologetic, unstoppable.